Well, of course, the Chinese invented print centuries before Gutenberg, and so had the Koreans. Now their language is ideographic, so it's much more difficult than an alphabetic language, but I think that there were a lot of issues that were cultural and social that determined why print became so important in Europe and not so important in China. So there was the invention of the printing press, and originally an entrepreneurial venture, and originally began to print Bibles, but it was really 50 years later when Luther came along, and his objections to the church at that time were very widespread. In those 50 years, what print enabled was for alphabetic literacy to spread from an elite of a few thousand people. There were about 30,000 books in Europe in Gutenberg's time, all of them written by hand, to a significant portion of the population. There were about 30 million books in Europe by Luther's time, and that meant that there were many, many more people who were able to read. So literate populations, whether you're talking about the original invention of writing in Samaria 6,000 or 7,000 years ago, or the invention of the alphabet a few thousand years later, or the invention of print, or the internet, these tools for communicating through symbols in new ways enabled people to do things together that they weren't able to do before. So in the scribal culture, when there were only a few people who knew how to read and write, a few people could really control what people did. When many, many people had access to reading and writing, they began to do things together that changed the way things were done. Monarchies became democratic nation states. Science became a collective enterprise. These were things that groups or populations of literate people did. The web is what a population of people who knew how to use the internet did. What are we going to build on digital media today? How many people are going to know how to use that to their advantage, and in a peaceful and a democratic way, in a way that increases human knowledge? I don't think that those things are guaranteed by the technology. It has to do with the way people use them.
Okay, and can you tell us about the literacies you're writing about at the moment?
I was asked by others, and I asked myself, are these new inventions and the way we use them good for us as individuals, as communities, as societies? And after 3 decades of thinking about this, I've concluded that the answer is it depends on what people know and how many people know it. In other words, a literacy. But by literacy, I mean not just the skill of encoding and decoding. The alphabetic literacy is about knowing how to read and write. But social media are social. If you are the only person who has the skill of riding a bicycle, you have a bicycle, you're still going to get from place to place faster. But if you're the only person in the world who knows how to read and write, or put a hyperlink on a website, then you're not really going to make a lot of use of that medium. It's important to have not just the skill of encoding and decoding, but to also know how to use media in concert with other people to get things done together. And with the world of digital media and networks we have today, there are a number of different literacies that are distributed in a very varying way. A very few people know a great deal about it, and some people know about some of them, but most of the people online today are not very well literate in the literacies of attention, of critical consumption of information or crap detection, participation, collaboration, and network know-how. So that's been the subject of my most recent work. My book, Net Smart, is about those 5 literacies. And I teach a course at Stanford based on the book about those literacies. I make a lot of videos and blog posts so that others can understand how to use the media we have today. Because I think there's a critical uncertainty where we have a future in which a few people know how to manipulate many other people, just as we did back in the broadcast era? Or will we have an era in which many people not only have access to the technology, but know how to use it well?